Hey folks, this is Kelani. We finally have a release date for patch 8.2 and it's smack bang on what some people were already thinking. From how the PTR was progressing and how many changes were being made recently, I was a little worried that this patch might not be coming our way for another few weeks yet, but I guess Blizzard is more on time than they're letting on. This is also the first time that we won't be getting a full 2 weeks heads up because patch 8.2 will be going live with the very next server reset. Yep, that's right, next week is patch week. Tuesday the 25th of June for the Americans and the 26th for the Europeans. Typically, we're given 2 weeks notice for this kind of thing, which is why a lot of us were expecting the patch to be released sometime in July at this point, seeing as next week is the last week of June. Even though the release date being released a week before it goes live seems like a bit of short notice, we were given a few blue posts which said they were going to wrap things up fairly soon with Season 2 and start moving us over into patch 8.2 and Season 3 of Battle for Azeroth. But without a release date attached to those blue posts, we still had no idea how long we had left to wait. Well, the wait is nearly over, my friends. This time next week we'll all be delving down into Nazjatar to see whether it's really better down where it's wetter and exploring everything else this patch has to offer, which is honestly quite a lot. I think this is the largest patch we've ever seen for World of Warcraft, which is a really good thing because Battle for Azeroth desperately needs an update to breathe some life back into the world. We need a reason to be excited when we sit down to log into play, and patch 8.2 will bring plenty of reasons to get back into the world. The Zone of Nazjatar will continue most of the story plot points in Battle for Azeroth, including the war campaign, so be sure you're all up to date with that before next week comes around so you can hop straight into the new stuff. And the zone will be full of rares, puzzles, secrets, pets, mounts, world quests, and it's also an amazing source of gear for any alts that have been left behind, and especially for any players who decided to take a break until this patch hits live servers. If you're waiting for 8.2, your wait is over as well. You'll be able to catch up to players at about 400 item level fairly quickly, with the potential to go all the way up to 430, which is the equivalent of the new heroic raiding gear. That's going to take you a while though, so don't expect to log in on Tuesday and get to 430 within a few hours of playtime. The benthic gear system allows you to gear up to 385 very quickly, and then you upgrade things from there. It gets significantly slower the more you upgrade, but if you keep up with it, Nazjatar can offer you something of an alternative gearing path. There's also a new reputation for each faction down in Nazjatar that will provide you with all sorts of shiny goodies, if you can get into their good books at any rate. There's a whole bunch of other things to do in Nazjatar too, but I don't want to spoil it all for you with the patch being so close. So that's one huge new zone in patch 8.2, but there's also another smaller zone coming with the patch as well. Mechagon works completely differently when compared to Nazjatar, so if you don't enjoy one of them, then maybe you'll enjoy the other. Mechagon is all about gathering bits and bobs from around the island in crates and rares and from every monster you find on the island. They all drop something useful and you can put those spare parts together to help build various constructions on the island that everyone can benefit from. You can craft gear, create pets, spawn special rares, put together unique items, or even build yourself a mount. There's so much to collect on Mechagon that it's going to take quite a bit of your time if you want to get through it all, but you'll be rewarded every step of the way. There's also a whole new system being introduced for your Heart of Azeroth as well. We'll be empowering our heart further by collecting Titan essences. These can be found all over Azeroth from doing all sorts of content. Each essence provides you with a special ability and a unique passive. You can only use a few of these essences at any given time, and it's going to require some serious artifact power grinding if you want to unlock the extra slots in your heart, but they're going to be well worth it. Every essence has the potential to send your character's power through the roof, so you want to go after these as quickly as possible when the patch launches. This isn't just a one and done kind of thing though. You can get several different rarities of each essence, and as you upgrade them, they'll deal more damage and have more unique effects, but getting rarer essences is going to be a lot harder and take a lot more time. They're going to be a huge investment going forward in Battle for Azeroth, and from what we know from the Dev Team Insights video, the essences won't become easier to get later on in future patches. They don't have any plan to create a catch-up mechanic for these essences. That means two things. Your time and effort won't be lessened or diminished when the next patch comes out. Everyone who has the same level of essence as you will have had to have put in the same level of work. And secondly, there's no real benefit to waiting. With the artifact knowledge system, it can always be tempting to just wait until the next few weeks go by so you can collect up a good chunk of artifact power and go way further than you could have in previous weeks, a lot faster, a lot easier. Oh, it's just so tempting. That temptation isn't going to be there for essences, so it's always going to be worth your time and effort to try and collect the very best essences you can get your hands on at any given time. We can start unlocking these essences right away in patch 8.2 as well, so it's going to be a mad dash to collect as many essences as quickly as you can before the next raid comes out. Those three things are really the huge pieces of content coming next week, but there's also changes to the profession system, including new raw materials, new potions and flasks, new cooking recipes, new fish, and new crafted gear. The war campaign will continue to lead us through the next chapter of Battle for Azeroth, so we can see exactly where Sylvanas is leading the Horde, and whether this really is going to turn into Garrosh 2.0. Mount equipment will change up how you view certain mount perks like water walking, and allow you to freely ride around on any of your favourite mounts without having to worry about whether or not it's going to be slower if you happen upon a body of water. Heroic warfronts will be making their debut to give us a reason to hop back into the much neglected new BfA system, which might give us a bit of a challenge for once. There's 2 new islands being thrown into the map rotation. Heritage armor for both the Taurens and the Gnomes is being added in. The Caverns of Time portal will pop back up in Stormwind and Orgrimmar. There's a crazy amount of collectibles like pets and mounts. Flying will be reintroduced for Battle for Azeroth, which includes the 2 new zones of Nazjatar and Mechagon. And there's a handful of class changes to boot. This patch is going to be massive, and I hope it does incredibly well. It could just be the thing we need to get back on track for a spectacular finish to a lackluster start that Battle for Azeroth has had so far. That's most of the content coming next week, but even though Season 2 of Battle for Azeroth is ending with the release of patch 8.2, Season 3 won't be starting up for another 2 weeks. That puts Season 3 of Battle for Azeroth's launch on July 9th for the Americans and 10th for the Europeans. Season 3 will change the plus 10 affix on Mythic Plus dungeons from Reaping to Beguiling. It's an interesting one, that one. Excited to see what you think about it. The new PvP season will start as well. The Eternal Palace raid down in Nazjatar will open its doors for all the loot plundering adventurers out there, and the Mechagon Mega Dungeon will also go live at the same time. So we'll get 2 weeks of the new zones, running around gathering new Titan essences, working through the story and just generally preparing for the new raid tier, and then we'll get another injection of brand new content to the game in the form of a new raid and Mega Dungeon. From what I've seen on the PTR so far, the raid is going to be amazing, as they usually are, and I've already worked my way through the Mega Dungeon a few times at this point, so I know that's going to be a blast as well. So just to clear up, in case you were hoping for a new raid next week, we will have to wait an additional 2 weeks after patch 8.2 launches to get our hands on anything related to Battle for Azeroth Season 3. The good news is that during those 2 weeks, the ahead of the curve and cutting edge achievements for both the Battle of Desert Allure and the Crucible of Storms raids will still be obtainable, so you can put those new essences to good work taking down those big baddies for the last time. With only a week left, I would suggest making sure you're as ready as possible. Get any characters that you want to play in 8.2 up to speed with the war campaign. That's going to be super important. If you're wanting to take advantage of the profession changes, I would recommend maxing out your herbing and alchemy before the patch goes live. You know, we're all going back to herbing and alchemy, right? Don't try to hide it. As a real quick note, if you have a druid at max level, you might want to consider leveling up herbing on that toon instead. With flying being available in the game again, and it being available down in the Nazjatar zone, druids are going to be the envy of all other herbalists in patch 8.2 once again. Yeah, we're at that time of an expansion. So if you can't beat them, you may as well join them. If you are hoping to level up any alts through the Freehold or Island Expedition boosting to get them ready for patch 8.2, you only have a week left to get that done too. Boosting will become almost impossible in patch 8.2, so you have a very strict time limit to get that done if it's something you're interested in. And it might be a bit short notice at this point, but if you're interested in any Season 2 titles from Mythic Plus or PvP, you only have this week left to get them all done and dusted. Next week will be too late. Personally, I am really excited for this patch to hit live servers. I think both zones are fantastic to play through, and they offer up a lot of content. The Essence system really interests me because it provides plenty of reason for you to jump headfirst into a lot of different types of content, and it gives you something to work towards with a legendary rarity. Legendary essences are going to be few and far between, at least at first, so getting your hands on one is going to be super cool and feel really special. And everyone else is going to know you have it because they have unique visual effects. We also haven't had a long-term grinding goal for a while, and patch 8.2 will be introducing quite a few of those, so we'll always have something to work towards if you want to chase after some of the bigger rewards. I almost can't believe it's releasing next week. I better get my butt into gear if I want to get everything done that I want to before patch day. I mentioned the Dev Team Insights video a little earlier, and if you haven't watched it yet, I would strongly recommend you spend a bit of time to listen through, especially if you're interested in the future of the game. Ian talks about the patch and what's coming, but he also touches on some of the background decision making that the dev team has been working through over the past few expansions. Most interesting to me was the section that talked about class design. There are a few key points made, but ultimately it boils down to the ability pruning and the switch from focusing on class design to spec design, and he said that they've gone too far on both accounts. They used to look at button count to determine class complexity, so the more buttons that we had access to, the more complex our characters were, apparently. That led to the dev team removing certain abilities that weren't really being used or had very niche uses, which also ended up removing a lot of flavour from the classes as a result. That's obviously a bad thing when you want your class to feel like a class. You know, a rogue wants to feel like a rogue, doesn't want to feel like some random guy with daggers, and then, if he switches, some random guy with swords. Some of the abilities that we weren't using all that often were actually some of the most flavourful ones, which gave us the feeling of being our class. And with them removing so many abilities, we've ended up with the bare bones classes that we have in Battle for Azeroth, which might actually be the single most important factor when you look at how this expansion has been received. Battle for Azeroth content is solid for the most part. There's quite a lot to do if you go looking for it, but as Ian said in the little video thing, our characters are the lens through which we see and interact with this world. If we can't enjoy or don't resonate with our characters, how can we expect to enjoy anything the game has to offer? The other points he made touched on how we've gone so far into focusing on the individual specs that nowadays some specs are actually more like different classes entirely. We have a lot of abilities which are locked into your spec instead of spread across your class, so when you swap from one spec to another you could end up using an entirely different set of tools. He also said they've gone too far on that front. So this means two exciting things for the future. The first is a return to focusing on class identity instead of spec identity. This could mean that specs in the next expansion or further into the future of WoW could share a lot more abilities within a certain class, and we'll go back to a spec being more of a focus on certain aspects of your class rather than just creating a mini subclass within your actual class. The second is that we could see more abilities being introduced to our classes and spellbooks, as well as removed abilities being added back in. It's encouraging to hear the feedback that we've been giving them this entire expansion, and for the last few expansions, is actually contributing to the future betterment of the game. I wonder how the production of Classic and returning to that version of the game, playing around with it and having some fun, influenced this 180 from the dev team. Maybe seeing how the game used to be has given them a bit of perspective about how far we've gone, and potentially making them realise that, yeah, we went a bit too far with some of this stuff. Again, it's a great listen if you're interested in the future of WoW. I'll link it in the comments section below. The class design stuff starts at around 22 minutes in. But that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. I can't wait for next week and for the release of the new raid. All of this content that I've been playing around with on the PTR is finally going to be on live servers, so I can actually feel good about progressing through it all. I hope you all have a blast, and you can be sure I'll be tagging along with you in the form of a few videos here and there, so I hope you look forward to those as well. What are you most excited about in patch 8.2? Are you surprised about the release date for next week? How do you feel about the dev team promising changes in the future of World of Warcraft? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.